Hello, everyone. I am Hannah Ruth Engelbrecht from the University of British Columbia, and I am very pleased to welcome you all today to the 24th HIBAR Research Alliance webinar in this series. So HIBAR Research and the HIBAR Research Alliance stands for Highly Integrative, Basic, and Responsive. And so if you are interested in previous webinars, you can find them on the HRA website, which is hibar-research.org. And today I'll be one of several presenters who are graduate students at UBC and leadership members from the HIBAR Research Buddies team community project. And we'll be having about a 25-minute presentation today about this project with about 20 minutes for a Q&A after. And then maybe a few takeaway snippets at the end. Obviously, first and foremost, none of this could have happened without some funding, and we are grateful to our funders across the UBC space, both the Science Strategic Innovation Fund, several faculties, and several special funds, the Walter Gage Memorial and the Tuam Est Student Initiative Fund, for making this all possible. And now I will hand off to Rubia to introduce you to HIBAR Research.
Hi everyone, my name is Rubia. I am a PhD student in computer science at UBC and one of the student leaders for the first cohort of our pilot project called HIBAR Research Buddies, which will introduce you more throughout this presentation. Before we talk the HIBAR Research Buddies, I wanted to just get a reminder or maybe an introduction if you're new to this topic, which are highly integrative, basic, and responsive projects. HIBAR projects are projects that embrace mainly two key dualities. The first one is the leadership axis. So HIBAR projects are projects that integrate academia and societal leadership, creating this cognitive diversity and like fueling innovation because we are bringing in different perspectives of problems that affect society as a whole. And the second key point of HIBAR projects are that they integrate the academic purpose with the societal purpose. So academic purpose sometimes also referred to like discovery and exploration type research or basic research. With societal purpose relays this idea of creating projects that are immediate impact or impactful to society as an immediate outcome. So just in putting it into a figure, we would have HIBAR projects are right in between these two different joints of axes. So they're highly integrative, bringing these different perspectives, and they're basic and responsive because we're trying to address problems that are both in the discovery space and the impact, societal impact space. In this HIBAR scene, we have the HIBAR Research Alliance, which started here at UBC. It has a mission of it's a network of volunteers, and it has a mission of supporting HIBAR projects within academia. So HRA's goal is to increase the rate of HIBAR research projects in academia from 1 in 20 to up to 1 in 5 by 2030. We hope that this will help universities respond more effectively to societal issues, but keeping the level of excellence of research output, which is expected if you're in academia. And as we'll describe today, graduate students have a key role in in this scene, especially because we're on the day-to-day here, trying to make our research projects and make them impactful. There is some hunger from graduate students to participate in these kind of projects. So in this context, we launched HIBAR Research Buddies, which is a pilot project. And in my cohort, it was a pilot project, but we're hoping to expand it, which our students are eager to make these societal impact in their research, but establishing those relationships with external to academia sometimes it's a big task, and it's hard to find opportunities to do so. So we with HIBAR Research Buddies, we wanted to provide a supportive community to create more opportunities for people to engage in HIBAR type research. while fostering kind of sense of belonging, because now you have unique challenges that are not experienced by every other like grad student. Now you have to handle multiple stakeholders. We're trying to tackle a project from multiple facets, so it becomes complex quite quickly. The community activities that we focus on are kind of like emphasizing this value of co-leadership and co-production with this duality of leadership from both sides. Uh, just from our current cohort or our previous cohort, sorry, of HIBAR research buddies, we were student led, so there were 9 of us. We're from all over UBC, different disciplines. You get a chance to meet some of us today. And the central focus was this co-leadership aspect of by graduate students and their faculty, of course, and collaborating with external experts. I'll hand it over to Jacob, which is one of our student leaders, to talk a little bit more about the organizational aspects of her team. So, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Rubia. So I'm Jacob. I'm a PhD student in medical physics. And I'll just talk a little bit more about our project. So we had these student leaders, and we had to figure out what we wanted to do um, and how we wanted to do it. So upon initiating the project, we kind of came up with a vision, mission, and goals for our team to work towards. And we established some structure to our team. So with 9 students, there's quite a few people. We need to figure out how to best kind of accomplish our goals. So we established 4 different teams: an events team, a communications team, a funding team, and an operations team. And we all kind of split up into 1 or more different teams, and we decided what each of these teams wanted to accomplish and how we wanted to do that. And in doing so, we needed to make use of some technologies. So we used Zoom, especially since our team was split across the Vancouver and Kelowna campuses. So it wasn't really feasible to meet in person. We also use Slack regularly to communicate. And we had a pretty extensive Google Drive that kind of compiled all of our work and all of our findings. And one of our main goals was to kind of create a community. And to do so, we needed to advertise and create awareness about ourselves. And so one way we did this is we made the most out of existing UBC communication channels and our personal networks. So we asked these different people to share our message, and we asked people that we knew to kind of join us. And in addition to that, we didn't want to rely kind of on others to share our messages, so we created our own email directories of UBC groups with similar interests to HIBAR-B, of all the deans and directors of all UBC faculties, of all the department program coordinators / assistant for all departments with a PhD program at UBC, and for the cluster lead of all UBC funded research clusters. So with all these emails, we were able to kind of send out our message and try and get more students involved. And one way to quantify this, looking at the figure on the left, is the number of subscribers we had to our mailing list over each month. And so you can see there's a progressive increase. There's kind of 2 steep jumps. So between September and October, we advertised a research interest survey, which will be talked about later. And we got quite a few new mailing list subscribers from that. And then we sent out an email to a bunch of those directories that I just mentioned between December and January. And that also helped us increase our numbers. And then if we look at the table on the right, just shows a distribution of our community members. So you can see that it's pretty well spread across a number of faculties from science, arts, applied science, all the way to education and forestry, with a total of about 450 members. So pretty good. And in addition to that, once we had people in our community, we wanted to keep them engaged and provide some value to them. So we had a monthly newsletter, which shared various things, but kind of gave more information about who we are and what we were working on and things we thought were interesting. We created a website, and it has a bunch of our kind of work that we've done. And we also had social media accounts to share some of these things. And with that, I'll hand it over to Fernanda, who wasn't able to join us today, but shared a video in her absence.
Hello, hi everybody. My name is Fernanda Novoa. My background is in medicine, and I just recently completed a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies at UBCO. Here, I used community-based research and work with local organizations to explore how the public health response affected migrant agricultural workers in the Okanagan during the COVID pandemic. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the survey and the interviews that our team conducted during the first stages of the HIBAR Bodies project. Our team conducted an online survey because we were looking to better understand what were the research interests of UBC grad students and more particularly their interest in HIBAR projects. We received more than 200 responses, which helped us with valuable insights to understand how to tailor our outreach efforts. And the survey also allowed us to build a strong distribution list and establish communication channels with more than 200 students. After the surveys, we complemented this information by conducting 17 individual interviews with grad students who were experienced in HIBAR research. These more in-depth conversations allowed us to gain more insights about their experiences with HIBAR, to understand the challenges, the strengths, and ultimately, we wanted to better understand how we could support our community. So this information gained helped us to identify 4 areas of focus for our project. First, to build awareness about HIBAR projects within the university, build support within the university, such as access to compatible funding, for instance, to build connections and opportunities for networking, for example, with faculty and non-academic partners, and to build capacity by sharing opportunities to develop the skills needed in HIBAR projects. My personal experiences conducting HIBAR research have taught me about the importance of collaborating with those who are directly impacted by research. And I am a true believer of the transformative power of collaborative research. Joining HIBAR bodies has allowed me to connect with like-minded graduate students, and to learn from their stories has been a true inspiration. I'm very grateful for being part of this vibrant community, and I look forward to seeing our community grow.
Just thank you, Fernanda, for that great experience share. As she mentioned, we were starting from scratch and creating this community and like just trying to understand what are the different interests that we needed to tackle. Through their interviews, we realized that a lot of our respondents were from very specific kind of projects, mostly focused in the Faculty of Science. So an interest of like trying to gather people from more diverse backgrounds and promoting a more informal setting where people could just come and talk to us so we could understand the demands for what people needed, graduate students necessarily needed. Um, for creating HIBAR projects, we launched the Buddy Coffees program. The idea was pretty simple. We just took graduate students out for coffee, and if all of us here probably relay coffee is the way to to get graduate students to participate on most things. Um, we had 14 sessions in total. From both UBCO and UBCV, with participants from all over campus. So we were able to reach some folks who are in the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. And we noticed that there was a high interest in HIBAR projects, but everyone was shared the same feeling of being unsure where to start. Usually their faculty, like their professors, were not involved in HIBAR research, where like they were interested in HIBAR research, but didn't quite have the platform to get that started. So there was a lot of questions around that. We also figured out that these more informal chats were a great way to communicate what are the plans for our HIBAR Buddies project and understand those like unique demands that arise from it. So we hope to continue similar efforts in the future, but no, we'll move on to other facets of our project.
Okay, thank you, Rubia. Again, I'm Hannah Ruth. I'm a PhD candidate in UBCB in the GSAP program, where I investigate biomarkers of healthy aging in longevous and normative populations. But today I'm going to tell you about the events we hosted as HIBAR Research Buddies, HIBAR-B. And there are two events we'd like to focus on. The first being our webinar, which we hosted in the November of 2023. Fernanda mentioned our interviews, our in-depth interviews with several graduate students who were engaged in HIBAR research projects. And this webinar featured 7 of them from various departments and faculties. And they were able to share their insights, some of the pros and cons of conducting HIBAR research as a graduate student at the university, and how they have faced that and dealt with it. It was very informative, and this webinar was recorded and is now available on YouTube. So there was value in having that for posterity, and anyone who's interested as a graduate student in conducting HIBAR research can now have a quick peek at that before embarking on what can be, in some cases, a difficult journey. As Fernanda mentioned, graduate students gave us a lot of insight into what support they need, and these 7 truly did show us both the true highs and lows of that journey. Okay, we next had our major inaugural launch event, which was co-hosted at both UBCV and UBCO, 2 different campuses, but at the same time. So we shared one seminar by Dr. David Hart from the University of Maine about the importance of building trusted collaborative relationships to facilitate meaningful research in adequate speed. And then each campus had a series of engaging activities to raise both interest in HIBAR research and set a precedent of building community amongst graduate students who are either already conducting this work or hope to conduct this work or just have an interest in it. And we really did emphasize the role that graduate students can play in this community, as well as in these projects, as innovative drivers of new ways of doing research and in bringing new stakeholders into the university environment. And we facilitated the introduction of the HIBAR Research Buddies to the graduate student community so that we became a source of information for graduate students. So hopefully this will all set us up for good success as the HIBAR Research Buddies community grows. And now I will hand over to Chunin.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm Jingyin. I'm a PhD student in the Electrical and Computer Engineering department, and my research focuses on the efficiency and the trustworthiness of the artificial intelligence models. And I will kind of conclude our I will introduce our community activity framework as introduced by Fernanda. From the interviews, we started to collect the insights and the question suggestions from the community members, and throughout the following events such as Body Coffee, we gradually form our framework. So from these valuable feedbacks, we develop a framework for a community activity plan that is building awareness and support and connections and capacity. So in here, we will introduce 4 main pillars. So first one is building awareness of the vital role that students can play as a part of a HIBAR project team, where we host events, we showcase the projects and share the stories. And the second one is the building support throughout the university for more students to participate in HIBAR projects by meeting the leaders and expanding the funding and advocating for changes. And the third one is the building connections to opportunities that enables more students to participate in HIBAR projects, where we build this peer support, we meet with the faculty, and we meet with the partners. And last one, but not least, building capacity by sharing opportunities to develop skills needed in HIBAR projects, where we identify key skills and we share the workshops, and then we develop resources. So this is the framework that we have done, and building on top of that, we would like to share our next step is, first of all, sharing the results and learnings with both people at UBC and at other university who may be interested in launching a similar effort, and fundraising for the next phase by raising funds to support a two-year next phase, which are from the leadership stipends or events activities expenses and operating costs. And the third one is continue outreach efforts by staying in touch with our existing community members at UBC and continuing to gather insights from them. So yeah, so please contact us if you're interested in participating in a next stage at UBC, or you're interested in launching a similar effort at your campus, or just interested in learning more and sharing ideas. We love to hear from you, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us by the email. And I will hand it back to Jacob and Rubia for the Q&A section.
Thank you, Junan. We already have one question in the Q&A box, which is, it sounded like you were starting with a blank page in terms of defining and implementing this project. This can be a challenging experience, but also fun. How do we find the overall experience? I have some ideas, but I wanted to give space for my peers to answer it. Maybe Hannah Ruth, do you have any thoughts that you want to share?
Being part of this process was very, very interesting. And in the way of any pilot organization, I think it took some effort and getting used to it and getting used to working remotely and across different campuses, university-wise, but we found our feet. So hopefully the next group can just have an easier start.
Yeah, it's such a fun opportunity to just go out there and ask people what they do for research. So
Yeah.
on that side, if that's something that you're interested in, I would highly recommend starting your own HIBAR Research Buddies cluster. I think you learn a lot from what people are doing in their different styles of research around campus.
So one thing we found when we started with this blank page is that it was pretty challenging to get started, especially when we didn't really know each other. We weren't really able to connect in person since the Kelowna campus is about 400 kilometers from Vancouver. So there isn't really an opportunity to meet in person. So yeah, I guess just one of the challenging things was getting to know everybody and getting to know how we wanted to orient ourselves. So we've kind of concluded that in future iterations, it would be worthwhile to take the time to meet up together to get to know everybody, so we can work more effectively together. And I guess we'll move on to the next question. So thank you for sharing your inspiring work. Do you see any difference in response to your initiatives from PhD students who aim for faculty jobs and those who are mainly looking for industry jobs?
I think a lot of the community event where we had a chance of like talking to people one-on-one, the interviews and the buddy coffees, just like really these more informal spaces where we could have these conversations with graduate students. It's quite a mixed response. We had a lot of students who were interested in going for industry jobs. And a lot of it might be just like the current state of the market and like how competitive academia has become. That a lot of people are interested more in industry jobs than in academic jobs. But there's this hunger for staying connected with both sides. I think I at least didn't encounter much distinction from folks who want to stay in academia to folks who want to go to the industry. Though the sample of academia-oriented PhD students were much smaller than the industry-focused ones. That in itself could be a signal that maybe more folks who are industry-oriented will seek HIBAR type projects, because if you came this far to get a PhD, you probably are very interested in the research aspect and like the basic research aspect of day-to-day projects. But at the same time, you still want that connection with something that is like kind of like user first or people first, and you want to deploy those solutions to like someone to be able to benefit from it immediately. Does anyone else have other thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a thought, just that I agree with you, Ruby. I think, yeah, there's not necessarily a difference. I think it's people who are interested in that kind of connected research and they happen to be in industry and academia focused mindsets. But I also think from the people I spoke to, a lot of people came from a background where they had been engaging with a set of stakeholders, either as some kind of professional or in another working capacity before doing a PhD. So they just brought those stakeholders along with them into their PhD research. And so the research drive was formed through that relationship with the stakeholder before the PhD even started. And so there's a desire to just not necessarily focus on academia, but to kind of do good by your community that you've come from, which was quite interesting, because not too many people that I spoke to did HIBAR research with a completely brand new stakeholder that they had never considered before. They kind of had some kind of existing relationship prior to their PhD. So it's kind of it was less a job focused output and more you have this passion about how you can help a community that you are connected to.
Thank you, Henry. We have another question, which is how might faculty members specifically support this community?
So I think there's lots of answers to this question, but I guess I'll start with just the simplest one. I guess when you're a graduate student, you really look up to the faculty member. So even just like sharing the emails and saying that you think this is something kind of worthwhile looking into is a big part. So just kind of sharing that awareness.
From what we heard, understanding that the timeline of a HIBAR research project is going to look a little different to a conventional research project where you control nearly everything. Everyone knows that I think in any PhD, deadlines can get away from you. There are so many moving parts at any given time, and HIBAR research projects add a whole set of stakeholders who don't kind of participate in the university process in any way. And so they're not beholden to university internal PhD guidelines, nor do they care about them. So if a stakeholder is interested in something moving forward, they might not be interested in the fact that your comps exam is coming and you're stressed about taking a comprehensive exam, for example. And that has implications down the line for things like funding and what you're expected to deliver in a PhD program.
And just like a couple extra thoughts on that. The first one is that HIBAR projects are very dependent on networking and relationships. And something that graduate students are also guilty of is just kind of like this silo-oriented thinking that we sometimes get drawn to in academia. We get so deep into our field, we forget that there are other people in the world. So just getting out there and making those connections. Because it's really challenging for a graduate student, and we have another question related to this that we can dive into more. But for a graduate student to forge those relationships from ground zero and get a project running right away, that's very difficult. And the second point is just like being aware of like different outlets. For example, here in Canada, we have like MyTex could be a venue for finding different connections. I'm currently working with an industry partner who is involved in my research at like more of a basic capacity. So they're involved into like crafting research questions and like helping me with the process, almost like a co-supervisor. And they're funding my research as well. But I get to work with them in this more like of a high-bar project style type of project. But it came a lot from my supervisor being like, oh, we have this opportunity of applying to this particular opportunity. Let's try and do this together. Not that you have to do everything together with a grad student, but like just being aware that these things exist and like letting them know. I think it's very helpful.
And I guess building off those points a bit, so there's another question that it's been mentioned that the partnership element of these projects is more challenging for students. So just can we explain a bit more about these challenges that are faced in this regard? So I guess I'll get things started. So one thing is when you're partnering with different people from outside of academia, sometimes these projects aren't as large. So you might be, say, the only graduate student working on it, and maybe you're not working on campus, so maybe your lab somewhere else. And this element can be challenging because you're kind of sent off on your own. You don't necessarily have these students around you to rely on. And I think that's another strength of this community is that you can kind of talk to and learn from other students who are in similar situations, just to understand some of those day-to-day kind of small things. But as a student, you might think about it a lot, how you're supposed to interact with different coworkers, how often should you follow up with people on emails, kind of all those small things that as a student, they're kind of new to you. And it's good to have kind of other students to ask about that.
Another aspect that throughout our interviews came up as challenging is kind of like managing expectations from all the different stakeholders. We had some cases, for example, of students working closely with community and like NGO partners. And a lot of the times, like they don't have a good clarity on what is the life cycle of academic projects, right? Like you have this like conceptual stage evolving to like experiment design and data collection up to eventually you want to publish that somehow. And some folks don't even know what is a paper or a journal, so you have to like deal with these different life experiences from both, like you have your supervisor who's very ingrained in academia, and then suddenly you have a stakeholder who's completely new to this whole environment. And like Hannah Ruth mentioned earlier, just keeping the deadlines in check. If you're on a program, you have like all these milestones that you have to complete. So that gets challenging very quickly. So that can evolve into a big problem if not managed correctly. Yeah. We have another question here, which is around do you think some of the necessary skills you've described regarding network communication, building relationships, and others should be a greater part of the traditional graduate student curriculum?
I think so. I think both for HIBAR research projects generally, but I think even within academia, as we try and move out of the academic silo problem that a lot of universities have grappled with, being able to speak and communicate your research to a non-expert and bring in what a non-expert is trying to tell you and take their feedback is key in driving more meaningful research.
I would like to echo to the building relationship part because yeah, I had and once I interview a student and like her research is about indigenous people, especially elder groups, and yeah, she talked about of course there's NGO that collaborate them together, but still she has to build a relationship with them so that they have built a mutual trust so that things can continue. I think that's essential part in doing this kind of research. And yes, I believe this is some key thing that we have to learn during our graduate studies. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, even if you decide to stay in academia with a very siloed type research, which happened for some fields, you're still going to be dealing with people every day as part of your job, and try to communicate that. So I am a firm believer that those skills should be trained. You're going to be either probably mentoring a student at some point, so just having access to um kind of like improving those skills, I could see that being very beneficial. We have another question in the chat, which is from your discussions with students who are currently working on HIBAR projects, is there a common process by which they became involved in them? Are those paths things that could be expanded to give more opportunities?
I don't think there was a single common path, but there were three major paths that I kind of saw. I'm not sure if you guys agree, but firstly, people who knew the stakeholders from previous work life experience and wanted to give back to the community. People who had a supervisor who were conducting a type of research and already had a relationship with the type of stakeholder, whether or not that research was a HIBAR project or just a more general relationship. And then thirdly, students who had an idea of the kind of research they wanted to do and establish those relationships from scratch themselves, and made it happen, and fortunately had a supervisor who was on board with them doing that.
Yeah, one common thread was a bit on this expansion of like kind of a database of opportunities, either external partners who are interested in collaborating or have like problems already that they would like to work on, but they don't quite have um, the the resources to do so, and like the academic environment, like working with a grad student would provide that. And others would be, for example, faculty who already have these like established relationships, could post that they have these projects open, like specific projects open, to attract students who are interested in that sort of work style. Jacob, sorry, you had a point.
No, I agree with what you say. I feel like just more awareness about the existence of these projects, both from people who might be outside of academia that would like to look at something in a specific way, and for students just knowing that there's these projects that they can work on.
Another question is if a faculty member who is working on a HIBAR project and wants to enable a graduate student to work on it, are there some good channels through which they might find interested students beyond the process that are currently used for recruiting students?
So Ruvia and Jacob both mentioned this, but we're hoping as HIBAR to build a network of students interested in this kind of research and faculty members who are interested in having students who want to do this kind of research. So we're actively building a resource. As far as I know, at the moment, there's not a specific designated pathway to do that, certainly not at UBC. So it might just be a conversation that a supervisor has with a student in the process of recruitment.
And solely speaking from my experience as a HIBAR research buddy, not necessarily as a member of HRA, I wonder if in the future HRA could have a section on the website dedicated to these kind of projects to perhaps like attract people. But we have to funnel people to the HRA website in the first place. So it becomes a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. Another question is pressure and stress for graduate students are very high nowadays. One reason is the feeling of lack of academic meaning sometimes. Did related topics occur in your informal discussions? Maybe thinking back at the interviews, yeah.
Yeah, certainly some of the people I spoke to were doing very, very hands-on work with different levels of organization. So I've spoken to people who are working with schools for deaf children, people who are working with local kind of earthquake preparation, NGOs, and people who are working with healthcare, public health organizations. So there are different scales at which a HIBAR project can take place. But certainly any student who is already conducting HIBAR research certainly felt that their work had academic meaning, more so than the average student engaged in purely academic, non-HIBAR research, where the meaning isn't necessarily absent entirely, but might just be so far down the road that you're not going to get a chance to see its life cycle completed, coupled with the lack of knowledge translation in a lot of sciences specifically to the real world.
I don't know, at the end of the day, when you're doing your research and you're working on these things, when 3 or 4 o'clock hits, it's nice to know that what you're working on might help somebody, even if, your research project isn't going to work out. It kind of makes you work that little bit harder just to know that what you do for 3, 4, 5, hopefully not 6 years, might actually help somebody at the end of the day. And I guess that kind of trickles into the next question. One of the goals is to generate a greater sense of belonging for students who may feel that academia is disconnected from the needs of society. And presumably some of these disaffected people have already decided not to pursue grad school. So the question is, do we need to reach these people sooner? And if so, how might we do that?
Yeah,
That's a tough question.
really hard question. Sometimes honestly starting in undergrad, I think I'm reflecting on my own personal experience towards like coming to grad school, just kind of like this involvement with external members, not necessarily a particular section of society, was really important to me. I am a type of person that working as part of a larger group is beneficial. Not everyone is like that, but just making sure that people know that there's more than one way of being a researcher. Sometimes we have that stereotypical image of someone who's just sitting alone in the lab doing their own thing, and that is true for a lot of our peers who are just working independently, and there's no desire from themselves, from their labs, to create more of like a community oriented type of work style, and that can be very isolating. And if I didn't know that I was able to work with, um, before I applied to grad school, if I was able to work with uh, something that aligned more with my own values, I would probably not have chosen to come to grad school. So definitely starting early and doing a little bit of that science communication, but either like social media is one big outlet right now, but just putting uh unveiling a little bit of what academia is before you have to be so immersed in it to understand how it works. Yeah.
And then it's just advertising on faculty pages that that's the kind of research you do, because a lot of people before they consider applying are often looking at people they'd be interested in working with. And if you don't see anyone you're interested in working with, you may not apply. So for faculty to stress that that's the kind of work they do and the nature of that, and being very transparent about it, is always helpful.
And I guess just adding to that, kind of advertising what these projects are and what they might lead to for students. So I did my undergrad in physics, and sadly, a lot of people that I did my undergrad with are not doing physics anymore because there's not a ton of jobs in physics. But if there was kind of this greater awareness that maybe you can work on this thing that's a little bit more closely tied to an industry or something, that would kind of give you more experience, but also lead to a job. Just having that awareness helps because, yeah, a lot of my friends have gone off to go back to school and do engineering or something because there isn't a ton of jobs in physics. And so the next question is, graduate students in some ways have little control, and in other ways they have considerable influence to the next generation of researchers and academics. From your experience talking with graduate students interested in this community, do they see themselves as agents of change?
I think that's more a personality thing down to the individual than a broad category. I think there are some people who are inclined to see themselves as agents of change and to kind of see the meaning and the value of their work no matter what. And then there are people who are just not going to view themselves that way at first, and they will just be very happy to do what they do and they want to do meaningful work, but they may just be a little more self-effacing from the get-go. So it's and again, depending on your personality, the fact that in a university environment you may have very little control, that might just reinforce that self-effacing feeling for a lot of people.
Yeah. Another issue I think also related to general well-being, burnout in grad school it's not a new issue. I think has been around for as long as grad school exists, and now is only accentuated about many different factors, including financial stress, inflation, and cost of living, and all of those issues that are near and dear to our hearts as graduate students. So I feel like a lot of people, at least in the circles that we have entered as HIBAR research buddies, they still have that like little spark that like I want to do something different. I want to be part of something that kind of like transforms the way research is perceived and viewed outside of academia. I want to collaborate, I want to solve problems, but at the same time, I have all of these barriers to my own progress and like my own safety. So it becomes uh, a bigger issue that people feel like they're able to control. So I think even just having the space to talk about those things and like a HIBAR research buddies, like being this like safe environment where you can discuss these problems is beneficial to kind of like helping with that issue and motivating people to keep trying to change. Right. The HIBAR research buddies, we all had stipends, and I think that was beneficial for us as graduate students to be able to focus on this 5 hours a week that we're putting into uh, and just trying really hard to make sure that this community happens. So yeah, lowering the barriers, I think, helps people be more lively in terms of like change. Another question, and it's a little bit related to this, is how much impact would a greater amount of funding for students have? For example, if students could focus less on things that they're doing to supplement their salary, like teaching assistantships, could they spend more time on research relationships with their non-academic partners?
So yeah, it's a great point. Being a TA and all of that takes up a lot of time. So for myself, I do my research at the Cancer Agency in Vancouver, which is about 45 minutes by bus to UBC. So when you're TAing 12 hours a week and you're commuting back and forth, when you're working in these places that might not be on campus, it's really challenging because you might have, 2 labs you have to go to. Let's call it Tuesday, Thursday, Monday you have a meeting. So, that's 6 hours on the bus. That's 12 hours doing this TAing. So it kind of doesn't really become worth it to even TA at that point because you're just so spread thin between these two locations. And the partners that you're working with might not think you're working as hard as you are on these different things because maybe they don't see you as often because you have to be at these different places. So I think that the funding's huge because really graduate students are deeply immersed in these different problems. And when they have to spread themselves between different geographic locations, especially, it just makes it hard to kind of fully be there and to create those relationships when you're only seeing the people a certain percentage of the time.
Yeah, and I believe that this type of project could also be a solution to that. If you're forging relationships, especially with industry partners or like maybe with government agencies, you open up space for like more funding venues. We understand also that professors' funding it's limited and it's a challenge in itself. You're trying to manage a lab with like 5, 10 graduate students, and in Canada, our scholarships and like fellowships haven't been updated since 20 years ago. So it's a big challenge to faculty as well to be able to reach that funding and provide like an adequate level for students if you're trying to juggle so many different aspects of work. So it could be another possibility for folks to find more resources and be able to kind of diversify that portfolio of where money comes from. But it takes significant effort from all parts involved for sure. Uh, with that, we have one more and maybe time for another question. But the last one that we have here in the Q&A is, what is one piece of advice you would offer to another campus that wants to launch their own HIBAR Research Buddies community? And maybe we can go around for this one. I don't know, Jacob, do you want to start?
One piece of advice is challenging because I feel like there's a whole bunch of advice to be given. But I guess I'll take the low-hanging fruit. My advice would just be to go for it. I mean, why not? I think students are very interested in it. And it's kind of a great way to kind of promote the research that's going on at your institution. It ties closely with society, which people care about. I think it just has so many different aspects that kind of make, the people at your university interested in it, and also just kind of society at large. People want universities to be connected with the problems that they care about.
As much as the HIBAR Research Buddies at UBC did what we did by focusing on students very deliberately, I think if another university wanted to do this as a major project, I would maybe consider getting faculty involved from the beginning and faculty members who are engaging in HIBAR research. who have experience navigating the university administrative structure, potentially over more years than any single graduate student's academic lifespan, so to speak, would be hugely beneficial, because you could facilitate those kind of intra-campus connections and maybe get an understanding of if there are mismatches in graduate student difficulties doing HIBAR research and faculty difficulties getting HIBAR research done, or if there's any overlap and if there's a chance to kind of lower the barriers by working together as people interested in conducting that kind of work. And I would, like Jacob said, just go for it. I can't see the harm in it.
Yeah, I think I agree. And also, I think also one important part, as echoes to the previous question, is if we can first reach out for some like partners outside academia that can provide some more like a support. I think that would be a great great start, because that we know at least we have some for example financial support or some experience there, and then yeah, and then we can use it to attract more like a student to join the community.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just closing out here with a couple of remarks. The first one is talk to us. Well, our email is open, and we have a lot of experience to share. So feel free to just reach out, and we can try our best to relay our experiences from the very start. I think the second piece would be to just like always have kind of like a plan of action, because it's such a broad topic and it applies to so many different people in so many different areas. It's very easy for this kind of project to come off as like too abstract. So just showing people that like there is a plan, there are like tangible benefits or like tangible actions that can be taken towards like forming this community and making it a valuable space for people to be part of, like for example through these webinars or like skill sharing and other relevant items that could be relevant to your local campus. And the third would be just kind of like talk to people, talk to everyone who's around. I think every university will have its unique challenges, like say around the milestones that PhD students have, or some specific items around like let's say ethics that you have to deal with, like ethic board application and things like that. So just yeah, just foster relationships. And with that, I just wanted to get back to Jacob so we can have our closing remarks.
Yeah, so I think we'll just each share a quick key takeaway in these last 2 minutes. And yeah, just like to thank everybody for coming. So I guess my key takeaway from working on this is that many graduate students have a desire to influence the world through their research. And they're interested in joining a community like HIBAR-B to learn how to most effectively do this. But to build this community, it's going to take effort, and it's going to require careful planning and teamwork, because grad students are busy, and they have a lot of different competing interests. But if you put in the time to create this community, I think it will grow. Hannah Ruth?
I think there's a lot of enthusiasm on all sides for this kind of research, and a lot of universities, as I said earlier and everyone else has alluded to, may have different names for HIBAR research projects, and I think that it kind of creates division or a fractured sense of what's happening on any single campus. And so I think my take home is trying to find a way to not only lower the siloed thinking of a lot of academic institutions between faculty, but to try and just lower the barriers of the definitions we're using sometimes when it comes to putting pressure on a university to facilitate this kind of graduate student experience. Shunyan?
Yeah, I would like to share like what I learned a lot from this project is that I feel yeah, always take action and reach out, because for like how we build our like a community activity, or like for example for students who want to reach out for the partners or even reach out for the people who have similar experience for sharing and getting the feedback. I think, yeah, overall, like always take action and reach out, and yeah, things will go well eventually. And Rubia?
I guess my main takeaway, aside from the things that we have discussed today, is be prepared to be flexible. You have to keep an open mind that people will have different interpretations of what you're proposing in terms of the project. They'll have different understandings. HIBAR is not for everyone, and that's good. You need all flavors of research to be able to keep making progress. So just keep an open mind that sometimes people are just not want to be part of it, and that's okay. But there is still an appetite, and doesn't matter how small the cluster of people might be, they still deserve like that support, and be able to flourish in their research path. So yeah, just go and reach out to people, and you'll find like-minded folks pretty much everywhere. It's very fun. Uh, yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for attending today.
Yeah. Yes, and if you are interested in learning more about the HIBAR Research Buddies, as Chunyun mentioned, please feel free to go to our website. You can find it, I think, through the HIBAR Research Alliance website, or email us at hibar.b@ubc.ca. Stay tuned for more interesting webinars from the HIBAR Research Alliance. Thank you.